Hello, everyone. Hi, Perky. Hi, Ross. It's good to see you.
You too. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Yeah, doing great. Doing great. Thanks.
Your shirt should be there if it's not there today, any day.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Absolutely. How are you, Mark? It's good to see you as well. Well, good, good. I just went ahead and let everybody in that was in the waiting room. Calyn, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Good.
Yep.
Good, good. We had to make a last minute break. I've been at the computer, Ross. I don't know if that's still how you are, is at your computer all the time, but
Most days. Yep. Yeah.
I actually was talking to somebody about you today, looking for banking. I'll send over an intro, a connection, but they were complaining about there aren't any banks for this gray area of people that are not really in cannabis, but doing, say, THC remediation. And I said, you know, you may want to talk to the Westtown Bank. They may be able to
Love
help.
to talk with them.
Yeah.
Love to talk with them. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we'll just give it a few more minutes, wait for everybody else to get logged in. Do you have any updates that you want to share, Ross, or anybody else that's on? I'd love to hear. Uh-oh, I just tried to remove somebody from the group. That's not what I meant. Poor Sally. John, I see you're on. How are things?
Doing pretty well, thanks. How about you?
I'm very good. Any updates? What do you have going on?
Let's see. Just waiting for the financing to close and lining up the different use of proceeds that we're going to execute as rapidly as possible. So that's kind of it, closing that out and getting our ducks in a row to execute rather rapidly. So we're excited.
I wish I could be a fly on the wall and learn. This is just like one piece of this industry that I would love to learn how, and maybe this is something we can talk about later, Calyn, because I'm curious as far as like structure of some of these opportunities. And yeah, and I know that there's always this like IP area, and I just want to learn. I'm like, how do I get in and learn more?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. To the extent I can share anything that's helpful, I'd be happy to. Quite limited, but I'll help.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay, well, we'll just give it a couple more minutes. I assume we'll have more people log on. We had quite a few. We had just over 20 something register, so we'll see. Make sure a text message. Did any of you get a text message that went out today? You did? Oh, perfect. Okay, well, good. Well, we may just want to get started. This will be recorded. Are you guys okay if I go live on YouTube? Calyn, are you all right? You good? Let's see. I found that we get quite a few viewers when we do that. So it's been fun just sharing info. This will be recorded and shared on our Hemp Hallway channel. Just heads up for those that are on. They are transcribed also, so we have notes if you're interested. Outside of that, we will cut it up. Some of them we chop up and edit a little bit. I don't know that my poor editing team is like 25 videos behind, so we'll see. But the benefit is that we'll be reshared and available for everybody else. I want to give a huge shout out to, of course, Westtown Bank as a sponsor of GHA. They've been fabulous. Their name comes up all the time. I was just going to say that every time we talk about banking, somebody else is actually giving you tons of props and compliments. So thanks again, Ross, for everything you guys are doing. And then thanks also to our members, our corporate sponsors, and our members. And then tomorrow we have another live interview at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Just a kidding. That may not be true. Nope, it's not true. Tomorrow I've got a Utah Can event. Wanted to give a heads up. So we do have quite a few people coming in, like Cole Gibbs and Dan Higby is coming to talk about carbon. We've got Scott that's coming to present on the carbon blockchain also. But down in Utah, they're just starting to really implement the industry. It's been talk about the industrial applications. It's been kind of funny. They said, hey, will you come and help moderate this panel for industrial hemp? And they sent me all of the panels, or all of the panelists were like CBD extraction, things like that. And nowhere were they talking about the industrial applications. So I'm really excited to basically bring 4 panels to Utah to start introducing the industrial applications. And so that's this next week. So if anybody's in Utah or wants to come out or has any questions, don't hesitate to holler at me. But other than that, I'll stop gabbing and I'd love to turn this over. Really excited to introduce Calyn to the group. You've got lots of experience and I'm excited to talk about it, but I will turn it over and let you kind of do a quick intro about who you are and what you've done, how you got into this industry.
Sure.
And thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Mandy, for the introduction and for the invitation. It's really exciting to be here. As we were talking before we got on earlier, I was describing to Mandy that when I saw the title of this conversation, I kind of thought, well, I don't really relate necessarily to banking. I'm not a banker, and I am not necessarily in agriculture, and I'm not a cultivator. But my background really is a common denominator throughout my career has been empowering local to global communities through the lens of health and well-being. I am currently located in the Associate Director of Strategic Partnerships and Development at the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Global Health Institute, where I also received my undergraduate degree, and a lot of this sort of multidisciplinary thinking began. From there, I went to graduate school and got a master's degree in nonprofit management. I thought I wanted to go to law school. And thank goodness when touring the law schools, learned about a program at Case Western Reserve that really brought together the law school, the social work school, the business school, and applied it to really community development. So from there, had an incredible opportunity to join the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. It's a nonpartisan foreign policy think tank in Washington, D.C. So Congress created that think tank to really serve as a place where, and a space for, again, multidisciplinary and multi-stakeholder groups coming together from the worlds of policy, the worlds of academia, the worlds of NGOs, everything, everyone coming together to share ideas and exchange knowledge to really improve not only policy, but then, additional research that drives really evidence-based policy making. So was really enjoying that work, but my husband and I had an opportunity to relocate to Madison for family reasons, and it just wasn't sustainable for me to continue to commute between Madison and DC. So I started looking around for international development opportunities here in Madison, Wisconsin, which at the time, 10 years ago, really, at the university, I had begun to speak with GHI. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. But thankfully at the time, they just weren't ready for me. And as all good things come when time is right, I was able to join the team 3 years ago. But in that time, I worked as the executive director of the World Council of Credit Unions Foundation, and was there for about almost 6 years. And the World Council of Credit Unions really is it's a trade association, a global trade association that works with national associations around the world, and then also kind of at the state levels as well, to use credit unions and cooperatives as a driver for economic development, financial well-being. And so I had the good fortune of overseeing their foundation and worked quite closely with the organization to drive their programs, and really got to see health from a different angle through cooperatives and through credit unions, and seeing what they are offering to their members that's different than a traditional bank, and how those credit unions are set up differently to really serve the members. So I drank the credit union Kool-Aid for a while, and then was recruited to a credit union, which is where I guess the banking title comes from. I was a managing vice president of business development and financial empowerment for a large cooperative credit union here in Wisconsin. And at that time had an opportunity to really work on financial wellness. And again, that common thread of economic development, but wellness, health and wellness. And so that was just really great. But then GHI had this opportunity, full circle, to get back into global health and climate change, which was really the intersectionalities of where I work and really enjoy being. So being a Badger alum and the opportunity to come and join GHI late 2019 has been really great. It's really interesting time to be part of global health, as we all have been living through the last 2 years. The Global Health Institute is a multidisciplinary hub for research, education, and outreach here on campus. So we're really unique in that UW itself has these professional schools like the medical school, the vet school, pharmacy, all here on campus, all in one location. And we really work to bring these different ideas and disciplines together. So we work with 21 different schools and disciplines across campus, really serving as that hub to drive new research, drive new curriculum development. And our core thematic areas here at GHI are really driven by the UN SDGs. Our core thematic areas are span climate change, One Health, health system strengthening, and women's health. And all 4 of those really interconnect across each other, and which is why it's so important for us to have people from engineering as part of our group, have veterinarians part of the group, because it really is the ethic that the health of the planet really impacts the health of humans. And so basically my job is to focus on partnerships for the Global Health Institute. But separately, I was getting really interested in the hemp and cannabis space. I've always really enjoyed cannabis. I didn't know why until I learned about the ECS. It makes a lot of sense, given some of my just former athlete, UW diver, just lots of beating up of joints and things like that. And then just, balancing work and life. And so began to learn about the hemp industry and learn about, Wisconsin's history in the hemp space, which we can talk a little bit more about that. And so through just showing up at different events and learning about a group called Tokativity, they're a group of women who started chapters around the world to really destigmatize and provide education and opportunities for women to come together around the plant. So I thought that seemed like a really great way for me to jump in, and it was great until COVID hit and we had to stop meeting. So I started just kind of getting involved individually, like on my own, unrelated to UW and unrelated to being at the credit union, but sort of all these things in the marketplace were taking place at the same time. Including when I was at the credit union, federalization of the Farm Bill had just passed. It's 2018. Wisconsin saw a huge surge in applications for growing, for processing. And I happened to be just in the room when the decision was made to shut all those accounts down. Just too much fear and unknown around regulations. And so it just was really interesting to see that angle, and then be able to take sort of the lessons that I learned seeing that firsthand and apply it to now what I'm doing at UW, with this work around the United Nations SDGs, and the mission of GHI, and then how that actually interrelates to our vision and mission at UW to really improve health and climate, and how my goal is to really illustrate how hemp can be that multiple, versatile, from basically across all 17 SDGs, drive social, environmental, and economic change.
Absolutely. So
I'll stop there.
Well, and if there's any questions, please, if you have anything you'd like to ask. I know that Ross, being in the banking space, I don't know if you have any questions about the transition, but I'm kind of curious, like, where is hemp really playing the biggest role in those SDGs? Like, where is it? There's a lot of talk, and from somebody that's in it, and I eat, breathe, and sleep it, and a lot of us on the call do. When I try to talk about the economic, the ESGs, this is a whole new conversation. People are like, wait, what? How? Where? So I'll turn this over. I'm curious.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I think maybe it's helpful to take a step back, I'm not sure how familiar, I'll stop sharing. I was going to share, but I'll get there. How
I'd love
familiar.
I'd love
Okay.
it. Yes,
Okay. All right.
please.
Let me just
Please.
get that up. But I'm not sure how familiar the audience really is with the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So it might be helpful to just take a step back and really explain sort of
Please.
what that is, and really how hemp is such a key driver to achieving some of the targets and the goals that are established in the SDGs. So the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Are you sharing? Are you trying to share
No,
again?
I'm not sharing right now.
Okay.
I'll get there when I have an infographic to show the wheel. But so the UN is made up of 193 member states, and these groups have agreed upon 17 sustainable development goals, focusing on ending poverty, protecting the environment, accelerating economic growth through 2030. And the 17 goals have 169 associated targets, about 10-ish per goal. And really those targets is where the magic happens. Those are the indicators to really help move the needle and find synergies across the various goals where greater research and collaboration can happen. Sustainable development is really defined as economic growth to meeting the needs of today's generation without compromising the future of generational needs. The SDGs are cross-cutting and they're interdisciplinary, with many of the indicators and the sub-targets sort of repeating across several SDGs, so they can see directly where those interconnected issues like health, like climate change and equity kind of interconnect. And what's really unique about the SDGs is that during such a really divisive political climate, the SDGs have really remained favorable across the world, and serve as a blueprint for catalyzing local action to make local assets and leveraging local knowledge and resources to make global change. The SDGs have been primarily utilized in the past by governments, but like you were saying at the beginning, more and more we're seeing corporations, and in particular here in the cannabis space, talk about the SDGs in relationship to their ESG accounting and deliverables. So they do interconnect, and I would really like to see the industry start drilling down even further into the targets to see where there's some unique opportunities. And so through the SDGs, commonalities can be identified. And what we have done at UW is use SDG 360 thinking to really break down complex interconnected systems. So thinking about the SDGs, we basically took the SDG wheel and used a 360 analysis to really look at the interconnections across all 17 goals. This method really helps to break down complex systems and really holistically understand synergies, as well as trade-offs of a topic like global health. And we really used our 4 core thematic areas to get this research started. So it's a stepwise process, SDG 360. And it really optimizes impact by establishing really the broadest base for support possible. So through explicit identification of costs and resources, the SDG 360 helps to create, space for conversation, for democratic deliberation and decision making around, what critical sectors need to be working together. Where are we having unintended consequences? What are the trade-offs? And really mapping, using the SDGs to help map and facilitate relationship building and iterative perspective taking. So what we did, and I will share my screen now, is we applied, let me start this. So we took the 17 goals here and we started to tag them. And by that, I mean, we looked again using our 4 core thematic areas that were already influenced by the SDGs around health, climate change, health systems, and One Health, and begin to tag, which let's cluster these 17 goals. There's so many of them. Let's begin with a cluster of goals that, based on some industry publication review, academic publication review, conversations with our grant partners. So we have campus partners working with us that span the medical schools, School of Pharmacy, the School of Human Ecology. I'm missing others, but and then we're working with the UW Health and some policymakers here in Wisconsin, as well as industry partners like the Last Prisoner Project and Steve D'Angelo. So we took a lot of the knowledge that we were learning from all of that and used that, coupled with our mission and our vision, to find just the first 4 clusters that made sense for our work. And we found that SDGs 3, good health and well-being, 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, climate action, and life on land seemed like a really good step. So we took those 4 and we looked again at those sub-targets. So as I was saying, each goal has about 10 targets. We fine-tooth combed those targets, identified where there was synergy with hemp. So under good health, we found, literature around epilepsy and, all kinds of different health benefits. In SDG 9, hemp concrete, hemp fiber, and then again, climate action. There's just numerous applications that hemp relates to across all of the SDGs, but we wanted to start with these 4. And so using, again, these targets are interconnected, the SDG analysis continued, and we just kept taking the targets and then following them to where they were also co-listed in the SDGs, and then ended up basically doing a full, so here was sort of, we brought in the research, we went from those first 4, found more of them, and then those basically led to an entire sweep of all 17 goals, all 169 targets, and this is what we ended up with. So to answer your question, Mandy, this is how hemp relates to the UN Sustainable Development Goals at a very specific level. And what's exciting about drawing it this way is you can really see the visual of when you center hemp in the middle of the SDG wheel and you do that 360 analysis, you can really find where those synergies exist, but then also perhaps even some of the unintended consequences. So this is just a little bit more specific as to what those targets actually say. So at the wheel, when you look around, there was quite a few around SDG 2, which is zero hunger. And as many of you know, that hemp and many of the properties of hemp are incredibly important to ending food insecurities. And these targets really help to drill down where things like maintaining genetic diversity of seeds falls into place, how investment in rural infrastructure and agriculture research and extension services like we do here at UW are so important to ending food security, and how hemp specifically can be a driver of that change. When you look at, for example, down in SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, well, all of this is great that hemp has all of these benefits, but without the infrastructure, we can't transition to a hemp economy and have the benefit of what this plant can truly do across all of the SDGs. So that's how we've been using it. I would encourage people to use this in their own organizations, and also when thinking about hemp and cannabis and however they're using or working in this space. Because what's exciting about it is when we brought, a couple months back, we brought our grant partners together to have a similar conversation that we're having today, where we presented some of the research on, some of these folks don't necessarily work directly in hemp. So it's explaining to physicians who are being called upon in their practice to answer questions around dosing, and they're just like, I don't know. I mean, Wisconsin, we don't have a medical program. We're a top 10 research institution with incredible excellence in education. We have students graduating from professional schools going to legal states, but we don't necessarily have the education to support them. And so this SDG 360 thinking really allowed for people across campus to come together and then use this wheel to show them where they fit in this space, but then where maybe they also saw themselves in the other parts of the wheel, which will now hopefully as next steps drive future curriculum development here at UW. And we're already doing some really cool things. For example, the School of Pharmacy is, I believe, one of the first in the nation to be offering a ECS. It's a required course for graduate pharmacy students, and it's on the ECS. I think I understand it. I think we're one of the first. So we had the School of Pharmacy on the call with us, and they were so fascinated hearing from our School of Human Ecology, who's working with our School of Agriculture to grow hemp and how they're then processing it and using it for paper. So we're starting to do that here at the university. And of course, the industry is rapidly executing upon this, and academia is just one of the sectors that really needs to get in there and start breaking down some of these silos, educating our students, and then really serving as a resource to drive evidence-based policies. So that's how we're using the SDGs. And I know I wonder if she's still on here. I have a board member, Ann Behrman, who's also on the call, who's doing some interesting work in the health space and is very knowledgeable about GHI that might want to chime into as to how hemp and GHI all work together. But so, yeah.
I'd love that. And then I'd also like to dive into about other recommendations you have for partnerships within the industry when we talk about scale and what is needed on the research side that maybe industry isn't focusing on.
Well, I mean, definitely one of the areas, and this is just my bias coming through because of my lived experience, but I was really trying to encourage my credit union friends to get on today's Zoom call, because I feel like there's so much overlap in the values of the cooperative system and in cooperatives in agriculture as well here in Wisconsin. That's one area where I think partnerships could really be advantageous, not only getting people access to financial services in the industry, but then also being able to address inequities and being able to start businesses in this space. I mean, so much of it is investor heavy, that without access to things like small banking or small business loans, or even just a checking account, it's kind of a non-starter. So that feels like, as we wait for federalization and greater guidance from the various policy groups, that partnerships with credit unions, I think, is a great space. I'd really like to see the conversation expand into, I know there's quite a bit of grant money now available through USDA, and that's really exciting. But even USAID, and one of our grant partners is based in Nigeria, the University of Lagos. And similar to Wisconsin, they're not allowed to really do a whole lot in terms of researching the plant. But there's opportunities for knowledge sharing and opportunities for scholarly exchange and universities partnering together. And perhaps that's with industry as well, for sure. But I definitely see some more academic to academic partnerships. There's quite a bit happening already in academia. I think I just saw on LinkedIn today that Leafly put out, I didn't get a chance to look at it, but universities and academia doing research in this space, and we really want to see Wisconsin added to that list. So there's, I mean, the opportunities and the partnerships on hemp is endless. It's truly endless. And we need partnership, we need knowledge sharing, we need spaces to be able to come together and talk about what policymakers have learned, what industry has learned, what academia has learned, so we can really move fast and have the infrastructure catch up and all the other things that sort of are being patchworked right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think it's funny that, the Climate Partners for Climate Smart Commodity grant is first name in the grant name title is partners, just to show like this really is about coming together for knowledge share and resources. And so it's pretty exciting. Anne, I don't know if you're on, if you'd like to say anything or chime in, I'd love to hear from you.
Well, I don't know if I can speak so clearly about this because I'm a pediatrician by trade. I actually retired. So what my patients, the issues for use of cannabis in kids is a dilemma. But I think that it's interesting in Wisconsin. I just came back from visiting friends. I went to school in Kentucky.
Oh.
Part of the reason I'm on the call is actually to ask another question, and that is, they really tried to push agricultural hemp in Kentucky, and it was sadly kind of a failure because the markets weren't there for the farmers that invested in crops. And I was actually in kind of northwestern parts of Kentucky around the Kentucky River, where there's a lot of interest in using hemp as a agricultural crop. And what I understood from my friend who's a farmer is that that all the pieces weren't together. And I was wondering how I think you have to have the banking piece and the loan piece, but you also have to have the market piece. And I was wondering about that. So I guess I'm not answering any questions, but asking a question for people that might know.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. Calyn, do you have anything you want to add to that real quick? And
one of our grant partners from the school, both the schools of human ecology and the School of Agriculture are actually working through the extension office and have done a UW study to look at and work and interview and survey the cultivators here in Wisconsin. And that was a big component of what they learned from that, of cultivators wanting to know, beyond how do we industrialize hemp for other things? What are those usages? What are those end users applications? And where is the market for that? Where do we find it? Where do we get access to it? Especially here in Wisconsin, that's trying to catch up with its program.
I would invite Anne. I would say this, we've done a ton of these different meetings with all different topics, but I would say that the end market development is definitely something that needs to be focused. And when we look at partnerships, I would go back to, having a couple of those brands or those companies to come on and say, we're going to start using this openly in our clothes or our jackets or our car parts or whatever that is, animal feed, right? To really drive that demand. But with regulations the way that they are really stifling the grain market for animal feed, it really puts a hindrance on being able to scale market, and profitability becomes stifled when those end markets are capped, right? And so we are seeing like the herd market right now is up in the US something like 70-75%, but a lot of that is due to the import, export, transportation, and then lack of accessibility. But yes, it's something we work on a lot. It's something we talk a lot about. I'm interested too, as we start really building these consumer demand campaigns, making sure that we're putting credible data behind our campaigns. And I'm sure you can speak to that over at UW. And I want to hear something really crazy. I dove at UW, but University.
Did you really? You were a diver at UW at Washington?
University of Wyoming.
Wyoming.
So it's
no
so
way.
Funny. Every time you're like, oh, well, I dove for UW. And I was like, no.
Never meet other divers. That's so neat.
So random. When I read your profile, I was like, no. Yeah, but I was a diver, not even a swimmer. I only swam when I got in trouble.
When they wanted to punish us.
Yeah. It's like running. I'd have to get in the pool and swim.
Hard.
Yeah, if I'd balk a dive or something. But anyway, so I'm curious from you, about that, market and partnerships, like I said.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that we're hoping that comes out of these conversations and the research that we're doing through GHI, of our goal again at GHI being a catalyzer and convener and a hub for global health, climate change, and health system strengthening work, as well as women and well-being on campus, that putting and adding industrial hemp as a solution to many of the things we're working on, that those groups help us identify where those partnerships are and where they see themselves on the wheel, and where we can all work together to move things forward. You know, we definitely do not have the answers from this research. It's just a beginning of a conversation, and that's truly one of the main research goals of this project that I'm leading, is to facilitate dialogue and to facilitate just, again, really just information sharing at this point, of seeing that the SDGs, all 17, have the ability to move the needle on things like health, climate change, the economy, and like you said, putting evidence to that. So there is already a significant amount of evidence that exists out there, but when you look at what's available specifically for SDG 2, for example, which is good health, or 3, good health and well-being, the data around hemp and its ability to, a lot of that data is preclinical. There's not a lot that has been moved into clinical data. And so that is something when a lot of our team are physicians and pediatricians, and want to hear firsthand about how to answer questions around how it's going to interact with other things they're taking, or with their body or their situation. So again, I think I see our role at the Global Health Institute being what we do best in bringing knowledge together, and sharing those lessons learned, but then also helping to drive curriculum and the lessons that we learn to really shape new information. So it's great that the School of Pharmacy has started one of the nation's first ECS programs. How do we get that into the medical school? How do we get that into our new global health undergraduate? I mean, I had never even heard of the ECS until I started learning more about this space several years ago. So yeah, I think, we're just at the very beginning of this, though Wisconsin has a really long-standing history in industrial hemp, and has the capacity to be a leader in the space, given our agricultural communities, and certainly our leadership in nutrition, and in climate change and sustainability. So I think, I'm really hoping that through these conversations, partners want to come work with academia and want to continue to share those lessons learned. I know there's quite a bit of schools that are already in this space, and we're beginning to tap into their knowledge as well.
Awesome. John, I saw your camera come on. I don't know if you had anything you want to add. Any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. First, a compliment. University of Wisconsin has a fantastic tech transfer program. I'm a little familiar with it because I help University of Madison Med Center benchmark which programs in the country are most adept at taking translational research and moving it into the marketplace. And so, first of all, my hat is tipped. So I'm glad you guys are engaged in industrial hemp. Secondly, on the means or channels by which to disseminate information about we'll talk about the health benefits of industrial hemp into the broader marketplace. Do you see channels through podcasts such as other researchers have taken research out of the labs prior to going into full-blown longitudinal blind getting it out into the marketplace for people to become more knowledgeable about than to go back to their physicians? And I'm thinking of people like Andrew Huberman, David Sinclair, Ken Barr, a lot of people coming out of the sports medicine, sports nutrition world are taking a lot of the research they're doing now, which may be a precursor to ultimately something that's going to be adopted within the more traditional medical field. But these individuals are becoming passionate about it and going to their docs or going to other people and spreading it more informally and organically, but quite strongly. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Podcasts, Zoom webinars that Mandy puts together. I see Jeff on the line. Regeneribus put an excellent conference together at the United Nations last week, and we're very generous in live streaming it so that, and for free, where everyone could participate and hear. So I think the more that people can start finding anywhere, any platform to be able to demystify and share where they're bringing their expertise into the space, and how they're working with hemp, really helps to demystify it and helps to break down silos and figure out where synergies exist. Had I not had the support of the Global Health Institute, that really is very innovative in how they approach health and well-being, I wouldn't have really known to thread the needle of hemp across so many different things. I mean, I'd seen it firsthand in some of my experiences, but really being able to think through a very complex plant and numerous applications, and then taking the SDGs. I mean, I really think coming back to the SDGs, which is the framework I'm using to understand the plant, is where I see synergies coming together. Again, mapping and tagging at any point, I ended up finding, so I swept all 169 targets, found 54. There's more or less that's up for debate, but a sweep showed 54 targets. And so I think those 54, those are interdisciplinary. Anyone and professional can find their space in this. So I think just, again, finding and using a framework like the SDGs, where there is so much agreement around these being the golden standard that policymakers are using at national, state, local levels. Corporations are integrating into their ESG plans. Nonprofits, so many groups are now incorporating the SDGs into how they think about their work. And I think, here at UW, I'm going to continue to use our platform to continue having these conversations. I think the work that my colleagues are doing, for example, I won a grant. It was an intramural grant here at UW to do this research. And at the same time, another grant partner of mine received similar funding, and they, at the School of Agriculture and the School of Human Ecology, are doing hemp by hand workshops. So they're bringing people to campus. So first there's a virtual webinar, and then a day later you go and I got to make paper. I made some fiber, and I learned to weave with it. There was hemp concrete making. So I think, getting it into the community and giving space to also just come and touch the plant and work with the plant and just see it, demystify it, that it's not marijuana. And even if that were the case, I think we should be having, it's kind of why I stepped into toketivity of bringing a space where people can experience it. So.
Yes. Yes. Jeff, I don't know if you are available. I've got so many things that I could add to this, but I would love to hear about how the event went last week, and if there's anything that, you'd like to highlight from it. And I'm so disappointed. Karen and I talked multiple times this last week about how bad we wish we were there. And so,
ordinarily I'd be happy to speak, but you could probably tell that my voice is not normal. I ended up, as a result of last week at the UN and subsequent meetings with other parties on Friday and UN entities on Friday, by the time I traveled back on Saturday, I had laryngitis. So I've only just got my voice back, and it doesn't normally sound like this. I'm not the one to say whether it was a good event or not. There were many others. There were 200 or so there. We live streamed for free globally. If I'm to look at what the response has been on LinkedIn, then yes, it was a resounding success. we've heard terms like historic, transformative, game-changing, etc. And the good news is we have not blotted our copybook. We've been invited back, and we will go back in late October. And I would love to pick up on conversations with Calyn and the work that you're undertaking, because the event in October, actually, we're gonna focus entirely on hemp and bring the conversation that you've really just spoken about here to life on a global scale by bringing, I think we for sure will be able to secure the president of Paraguay to come and speak at the event. And Paraguay have totally, like 1,000%, just gone all in on hemp, and their use case is spectacular. And I think that other UN agencies like UNCTAD, the Commission on Trade and Development, see what's going on in developing nations like Paraguay as a bellwether for where opportunities it could be for economies, not only to uplift, but also in countries to develop their social impact as well as environmental impact. And as you've rightly pointed out, can impact right across the 17 goals, 169 targets, and God knows there's like 240 indicators. So I think that, I know Regenibus, we'd be very keen. I know we didn't get a chance to speak on Thursday, but we'd be very keen to get some work going with you. We know of other universities around the globe. And so I think that are interested in this work. And I think that there's a huge opportunity to do some knowledge transfer and really move things quite swiftly. So to be commended. I mean, you did a great job in what I've just seen and what I've known. So we look forward to more of that.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jeff. It was truly wonderful to hear firsthand from, you really brought together so many people and stakeholders, from local governments to foreign governments to all across the technology of what it requires to translate this plant into medicine, into all of its uses. And so I think having the visibility and the lessons learned of groups like Paraguay. And again, I think that's something as well. I mean, not even just the global standard, but at the national level with our patchwork of policies, I think there's so much to be learned. I think about Wisconsin and our program, which is hemp focused right now.
Right.
How do we, as we have policymakers on both sides of the aisle that would love to pass cannabis and marijuana at different levels, so medical versus recreational, and I just feel like there's so much to be shared around the targets that can really illustrate. We don't have to talk medicine either. Let's not talk about it. Let's find where it makes sense on this wheel and these targets for Wisconsin. And then where do we have people who have already done this at the state level, at the national levels, to not make the same mistakes? And what Paraguay, I thought, really resonated for Wisconsin was how they specifically, through their local farmers, really worked to catalyze the local economies and really integrate the feedback in real time as how the process was working. That's so critical. I think there's just so much need for input and feedback and collaboration across the space that the targets can really be a place for, pick an SDG and a couple of those targets you could spend an entire day on in any of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. The lady who spoke from Malaysia, Jamida Ibrahim, who's really forming this concept around halal hemp and this classification, which would bypass in many countries, many Islamic nations around the world that have clearly given an indication that they're not terribly friendly towards cannabis and or hemp, whichever you want to call it. And so to be able to bypass that through religious channels, because she's now working with a number of imams around the world. And if you could bypass nations like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and others, and frankly, you're bringing hemp-derived CBD and other aspects of hemp to 1.8 billion Muslim. That's a game changer. That's huge. And so I think, and we know that one of the ministers or senators from the Malaysian government who was there has already gone back to Malaysia. She's already been pushing a narrative in various media channels there to really encourage the Malaysian government to just, wrap their heads around the fact that this is a path forward to prosperity. And the sooner we do that, the better. And you remember also from Thursday, as I pointed out right at the beginning of the day, the conversation wasn't about cannabis, nor was it about hemp. In fact, either case, it's really the vehicle. The destination on this journey is the Sustainable Development Goals. It's the uplifting of 7.8 billion souls. And that's where we have a responsibility. And that's our imperative. And so that's I think how we should frame it going forward. Amazing. Great stuff though, Calyn.
Yes, absolutely. Calyn, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I the mic drop.
Yeah.
I mean, last week was truly, I want to see more academic institutions that are doing this work share their knowledge and share the research that they're doing, from seed genetics to social justice reform or climate action. There's a lot of opportunities that are that exist for, like I was saying earlier, that kind of partner to partner, even with our folks in Nigeria, where they, we have different laws where we can leverage. And it's kind of what you were saying earlier, Jeff, with bypassing different things and being creative with how the plant can really improve society and improve all of the SDGs.
I mean, the other thing that we're also doing, pragmatically speaking, back to corporations, is embedding the SDGs as an output back to the inputs in the business around ESG. So getting organizations to identify through environmental social governance factors, what are the true materiality issues that they really need to be focusing on. And by doing that and getting to a position where they have an ESG position, that they are monitoring their materiality issues, then they can begin to define their sustainability narrative, because it's not the same thing. But once they can define their sustainability narrative, we can also map the SDGs back to that, so they can really begin to report out on how they're impacting the Sustainable Development Goals. And that was one of the things that got the UN's attention when we were approaching them about having this event at the UN, because the idea of having a cannabis conference in the UN was never going to happen. So we had to find a way to sort of work through the corridors. And that's exactly what we did. We said, well, actually, we're not here to talk about cannabis. We're here to talk about your Sustainable Development Goals. And we're advocating for those. And said that if you're not prepared to open up the rooms to conversations like this, then you might ask yourself, are you still relevant? And are you still fit for purpose? Which is a pretty aggressive approach, but sometimes you have to kind of do that in order if you want to bring these conversations to life. So
Make a point. Cool. Well, are there any other questions? Does anybody else have anything they want to add? Bob, I saw your camera's on. I don't know if you have anything you want to chime in on or add. Ricardo, I'm from Florida. I don't know if you have anything you want to add. Okay, well, how do people get in touch with you, Calyn? If people want to get involved with your organization or learn more, what does that look like?
You can email me, calyn.ostrowski@wisc.edu, or contact the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Global Health Institute. We've got our website, and definitely on LinkedIn is another great place to have these conversations.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I have really appreciated it. I actually am really interested in learning more because just like you said, utilizing this as a way to bridge the gap, to start those conversations, especially in rural areas, right? As we see processors or big agriculture picking up, how is it impacting? What's in it for them as a community? And, I'd be interested more in what do those conversations look like? What are some of those challenges, or what are some ways that have really worked as you've approached those more reserved areas, that are hesitant to open up funding for, agriculture, and growing industrial hemp because of the fear, but really this list of benefits that we just went over. I have another question just really quick, and then we can jump off. When we were talking about and Jeff had kind of mentioned the ESG or the score, the SDGs on the processor, on the manufacturing side, is that similar to like an LCA where you take the raw material or the product all the way through manufacturing, so then it's given a grade or a score separately? Can you kind of break that down? I feel like this is elementary questions, but I've got.
Are you asking me or are you asking Jeff? Because I definitely don't know the answer.
Yeah. Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, to keep it at we've only got a few minutes here. I think what we've identified is, what we push quite frequently, is that environmental social governance and sustainability are not the same thing. It's very possible to have a very high score in ESG and not be sustainable at all. You only have to look at cigarette manufacturers when it comes to the SDGs to realize that that's the case, because they're impacting negatively at least 10 of the 17 SDGs. So by no stretch of anyone's imagination, you could argue they're a sustainable product. So what we are looking at is, as understanding as a business what is impacting you from outside. That then creates your environmental social governance position. It means longer term that you're investable because you're mitigating risks, etc. It's very separate to then determining, okay, now through the work that we do, we've created a bunch of products and services. How then are these products and services impacting people from a sustainability perspective? And we want to be able to then show the connectivity, even though they're separate. And that's essentially what we're doing. We think it's important at a corporate level, if you're in the hemp business, that you can truly show how your products and services are creating that positive impact for humanity. And what Calyn has done is excellent in being able to identify across the 17 goals where those impacts could be. And so that's, I don't know if that's answered your question, but
Yeah. I was just curious as to clarify that piece of it. So yes, thank you very much. Well, like I said, I would love to invite you guys back. This is a topic where, when people say, well, why hemp? And this is exactly what it comes back to, is it really is a solution to anything we're passionate about, right? And so I would love to continue the conversation. I'd love to invite you back and do a bigger meeting, a big audience where we can help really, transfer knowledge. I'd really love sometime too to even do a Q&A type panel where we can get discussion going, similar to what you and Jeff did, just because you guys eat, breathe, and sleep it, and you understand it so much better than so many of us. And so, yeah, I'd love to have you back. But is there anything we can do for you before we sign off, or for your organization?
Continuing to just highlight the work that we're doing here, the work that GHI is doing, not just, this is such a small component of what we're doing. We're really driving global health here locally and globally. So I think just to continue elevating the message that health of the planet really impacts the health of humans and everything on it. And that when it comes to hemp, that this plant really is something that can heal across all of the systems, every constructed system, as illustrated in the SDG wheel.
That's pretty exciting. Yes, it's a great infographic with lots of, makes you think, really puts into perspective the visual. Okay, well, thank you very much. I invite everybody to come back. I was just going to look at my schedule for next week. Next week, we have our member event where you can log in and learn about the hemp exemption. They're doing a debriefing and breaking down the hemp exemption. Erica, Stark, Morgan, Tweet, and Courtney Moran are coming on next. It's Tuesday at 11 o'clock a.m. And so that link is on our YouTube, or that link is on our Global Hemp Association website. Other than that, anything else before we sign off? You guys are good? Okay. Well, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate your time. Thanks again for coming and spending it with me. Thanks, Jeff. It was great to see you.
Great program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. I appreciate your time. Okay. We'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.